everybody. Welcome back to the Film Buds Podcast. This is episode number 287, and my name is Henry. Just me. This week, Elle has been pretty overwhelmed with work, so our schedules have just not really lined up as we would like to, so we will be doing a show together. Next week, we'll be doing the Trolls animated movie franchise, kind of unexpectedly, but we watched them all this past week, and so she will be back for that, so very sorry that it's just me. You're stuck with me, but hope that's okay. As always, thanks for joining us. Please hit that subscribe button now, rate, review, share, tell everybody about Film Buds if you haven't already. Thank you to all of our new listeners. Please check out our bonus show page at filmbuds.bandcamp.com. And there have been a lot of teaser episodes released on the regular feed if you haven't seen those already that show you a little bit of what the bonus shows are like. There's a lot of great content there, so please do check that out. And thank you again to all those who have. So this week, a bit of a random choice like last week, but I feel like with me, I would rather just have an interesting discussion on a set of movies rather than just the new release. Always, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I figured during these slower weeks or the more chaotic weeks, I figure I'd just pick things that interest me and hopefully interest you. And if you have any suggestions for things that you'd like to see reviewed on the regular show or on the bonus show page, please let us know on Letterboxd, on social media, at FilmBuds, email, all that stuff is in the show notes. We'd love to hear from you. Anyways, long story short, I'm going to be doing a Slender Man double feature. I'm going to be doing the Slender Man horror film from 2018, which is inspired by the real life crime of Slender Man and the two girls, which is what our other film is. And that is the HBO documentary, Beware the Slender Man. So I figured even though I didn't have a huge interest in watching the 2018 dramatization, because I did love the spoiler, I did really like the documentary, I figured might as well do both sides because I think they both have interesting points. Some are better for that reason, some are worse for that reason, but I think it'll be a good discussion. And yeah, thanks for being here. In terms of what's going on with us, not a whole lot, just been working quite a bit. I did get a new tattoo yesterday. I got a Bill and Ted franchise tattoo on my leg, which it looks pretty awesome. And I might post a picture of it on the Instagram page or something, but that was really cool. I love getting movie tattoos. That's a big thing with me. So got that yesterday. That took a while, but came out really well. And I'm going to be getting a little bit of vacation time in the next couple of weeks, which I'm really, really looking forward to because we've both been fairly burnt out over a lot of different things. So I'm happy that we'll get a little bit more time together, Elle and I, that is, and just more time at home, catch up on sleep, all that good stuff. And I hope y'all are doing well out there too. Well, got a lot to talk about, plus other stuff I watched. I have that. I forgot to mention that. Sorry. But let's get to our first movie, which is Slender Man from 2018. And we do have a clip, so take a listen.
You guys, I threw up twice this morning before I got on the bus.
Is it Carl's?
Ha, that's hilarious and also scientifically impossible.
Have you been having nightmares?
Mm-mm. Have you?
About what?
It's nothing really. It's just that video.
All right, so as I said, Slender Man came out in 2018, directed by Sylvain White, stars Joey King, Julia Goldani-Tells, Jazz Sinclair, Annalise Basso, not a lot of other big names. And the synopsis is, in a small town in Massachusetts, a group of friends, fascinated by the internet lore of the Slender Man, attempt to prove that he doesn't actually exist, until one of them mysteriously goes missing. Since this is an older movie, I'll do the box office. It made $51 million against a budget of around 20, so made more money than I expected, but not a huge hit by any means. I was aware of the Slender Man at the time. I think I had seen the documentary at that point, but I'm not sure, but I was at least aware of it. But I think the biggest thing with this movie when it came out is I don't mind if you take a true crime or disaster or tragedy and find a way to turn it into a film. But if you're going to do that, you need to make sure you do it at least in some ways tastefully or artfully as best you can, for lack of a better term. I only saw this movie in the last week or two because I had interest in rewatching the HBO documentary. I said, hey, what a good idea to do for Film Bud. So I figured I'd slog through this one, and I was hopeful. I knew it was supposed to be awful. And sadly, I was not wrong. It is terrible, I think, almost entirely across the board. And little backstory here. The Slender Man, and we'll get to it more with the documentary. I don't think there's as much to say about this one as there is the actual true story. But growing up, I knew a little bit about the Slender Man. I don't think I was really exposed to it until college. A friend of mine had that Slender Man game, which they actually show in the documentary, where you're walking around the woods and you're searching for clues, I think. And then the Slender Man is in the background and he'll chase you or kill you. I can't remember exactly what it was, but that was probably my first exposure to it, and it freaked me the heck out. That was about all I knew in terms of firsthand experience. I knew of the lore, the concept. I didn't really know about the true crime story until I saw the documentary. But the movie itself, if you're going to take, as I said earlier, if you're going to take something, whether it's a true story, a novel, whatever, especially if it's something like this where there is endless amounts of mythology, lore, designs, other stories made up by people all across the world, it's really pretty shameful when you do absolutely nothing with that backstory and background, because this movie does nothing. It is the most generic, bland, shallow, trite horror film that I've seen in quite some time. The look of the Slender Man, he's barely even in it, to be real. And the look of the Slender Man is boring. It really does just take the generic look of the Slender Man, the tall guy with the black suit and tie. That's basically all you see in the movie. And one big thing about the movie on a technical level, the lighting is horrible. I usually don't have a problem with lighting in Hollywood movies, low budget or not, but especially considering the budget of this movie was fairly decent. It wasn't made for $10,000. It was around 20 or more. The movie looks horrible. It's so dark that you can't even tell what's going on 80% of the time. And I'm absolutely not someone to complain about low level lighting, low key lighting, dark, shadowy, foggy. I don't really care. Sometimes I even prefer that, especially when it comes to horror. But there's a level that they crossed here where I actually could not tell what was happening, who was where the Slender Man was. Maybe that's the point, but I couldn't tell what was going on, who died, who's being attacked, where they are. The direction was sloppy. It was really, on a technical level, very, very poor quality. And that was a huge detractor for me, because I don't mind cheap jump scare movies. And if you're going to make a Slender Man jump scare movie, that's fine. But this could have been done so much better, because I don't really know what they were thinking when I was watching this. Because if you're going to take that story, do some research, whether it's really dark, creepy stuff, disturbing stuff, add it in. If you're already making a Hollywood movie and you're crossing that tasteful boundary of making a horror film off of a real life tragedy, then do something with it. It's not going to be any better if you make the most shallow, bland, uninspired film. I don't know what they were really thinking there, because if you're going to do that, don't even make it. So that was a big disappointment, because if you just type in Slender Man artwork online, you could spend years going through all the different designs that people have made and their own interpretations, their own stories, the mythology, videos, all that stuff. And I'm sure anyone who knows about the Slender Man is familiar with that stuff, because, so again, it is very frustrating on that level more than anything, because there are plenty of cheap jump scare films that I like, but this is one of the worst that I've seen in quite some time, as I mentioned. And Joey King, I like her a lot. This feels pretty beneath her. She's been in a lot of other good things, like The Act on Hulu, and quite a lot of other good films. So this film, I don't even know why she was in this. Maybe it got pushed back a while, or she just needed the money. I don't know, but she feels very out of place in this. And she's mostly just screaming the whole time, as is everybody else. Really, one of the only moments that gave me any kind of chills or thrills was the library sequence where the Slender Man is in the library, and there's that sequence, I believe, with Joey King. She's in that. So that really was one of the only parts of the movie that I was engaged with. Otherwise, couldn't tell what was going on. It was sloppily put together, poorly written, didn't care about anybody. The design elements were sloppy, not scary, confusing, frustrating, everything above. So I was definitely not shocked that it was this bad considering the reviews that it got and the reputation that I know it had. But more than anything, because if you look at something like an internet sensation or a toy or a board game or anything like that, anything relative that doesn't have any story, you can see the examples of studios saying, all right, we can do whatever we want with this. Let's go nuts. No matter what the story is, tasteful or not, because at the end of the day, it's a Hollywood movie off of a real tragedy. So you're already there. And these days, it's so easy to tell when studios go full committed to that idea, doing whatever they can with it, or the filmmakers rather. And then when they don't, they're like, all right, here, let's just make some money because this happened a couple of years ago. This is a big hit. Let's see what we can churn out with the least amount of effort. So really terrible. Won't ever feel the need to watch it again. If they want to remake it in some way or do a better version of it, I would watch it. Sorry if that's a hot take, but I would, because I think there is something at least interesting about the Slender Man, and there is a lot you can do with it, even unrelated to the actual true crime, or you could do a reinterpretation of that. I don't know, but I would be up for another film, a better version of this film, but highly not recommend this movie. Do not watch it. I thought it was horrible. A big, big misfire for me. That is a 1.5 out of 5. All right, let's get to the true crime HBO documentary, Beware the Slender Man, which is now, as you would guess, on HBO. And we do have a clip as well, so take a listen.
The palest man, the blackest suit, bigger than the tallest brute. Fear the man, the Slender Man, for he can do what no one can.
Came upon a 12-year-old female. She appears to be stabbed. She appears to be what? Stabbed?
Wire and Geyser are accused of stabbing the friend and leaving her for dead.
Police say the suspects were inspired by a character on a website.
Slenderman, a faceless ghoul.
We never thought she could possibly believe that it was real.
All right. Beware the Slender Man, as I said, is on HBO now, or Max. It came out in 2016. It's directed by Irene Taylor. And the synopsis tells the story of two 12-year-old girls who attempted to murder one of their friends in an attempt to appease Slenderman, a fictional monster from a horror website. So, as I said, I maybe had heard of the actual crime here before this came out. I can't remember. Maybe I heard someone mention it, but I didn't really know anything else about it, who was involved, why it happened, anything like that. So I'm really glad that this documentary came out because, like Slenderman, it's easy to get details lost and people to make their own interpretations and twist things. And when you actually have the real life girls and families and crime and investigation presented in a form like this, that does a good service to people in getting a real understanding, which is the point of documentaries, to document things, as you can imagine. The film itself, I have seen it twice now. Saw it a couple years ago, and then I rewatched it for the show. I think it is very well done. I don't consider it a masterpiece, but for what it is and true crime cautionary tales, it's one of the better ones that sticks out to me. Going back to the background with Slenderman, and the documentary really gets into this, where he first appeared in these, if you're familiar with creepypasta, on these horror websites and other things and other forums, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. It's one of those, really is an internet sensation where there's no money involved in all of this marketing quote unquote and spreading. It's just people are fascinated by it and it spreads and spreads and spreads like a virus. What the documentary gets into a lot is, and I can see this because for better or worse, there are intriguing things about the Slender Man. People call him the internet boogeyman, and he was seen not only as the boogeyman, but he was considered by some to be this weirdly a comfort or a savior for them, because all these people who use the internet to feel safe, to feel social, to get away from their lives, who were maybe very lonely or isolated, antisocial, whatever. He was this character who you could go write stories about, that you and the Slender Man went and did this, or the Slender Man tried to find you, or he was watching over you. And, I can see that growing up, even though I wasn't involved in that really, I can see if I was around that, I probably would be interested in exploring that world as well, for better or worse. Sorry if that sounds weird, but I think most people probably would. He's one of those characters that there's a dark fascination with. And obviously the true crime of these, and we'll get to that in just a minute, in which it went from being an internet sensation to really a horror story, not a internet horror story, a real life horror story, a real tragedy. And so it got this really bad, dark mark on it forever because of these girls. And so the documentary itself, if you're unfamiliar, there are these two young girls, middle school age-ish girls, who one of them, well, they both were interested in the Slender Man online, and their parents were fairly familiar with this, but they didn't really see the harm in it all that much, which that happens. I think it's hard to keep track of all that stuff. I don't blame them at all. But one of the girls especially was wanting to please the Slender Man, quote unquote, by killing their best friend, because then they, in their own minds or through stories or whatever else they read or watched or heard, they thought that if they didn't kill this girl, the Slender Man would come and kill their families. So, long story short, one of the girls was diagnosed with early onset schizophrenia. And then I don't know if the other girl was diagnosed with something in particular, but they've both been imprisoned now. One of them might be out at some point, and they spent time in mental institutions, and it's a whole mess. So, and the documentary does a good job of explaining that, so you can explore those details for yourself. But they took their best friend out into the woods one day, and they held her down, and the girl, the main girl, the schizophrenic girl, stabbed her dozens of times. I can't remember just how many, but it's insane to think about anyone going through that. The girl ended up surviving somehow, and in the documentary they say that one of the stab wounds missed one of her major arteries around her heart by a millimeter or something like that. Pretty insane, to where if she'd gotten nicked there, she would have been dead, and somehow she managed to survive, crawl out of where they were, and the girls ended up just leaving her there to die. And the girl crawled or walked, I don't know exactly what, but found her way to safety, or to where the authorities could come get her. And then, of course, these two girls were charged. And it's really insane and so horrible to think about, where you can see in this day and age, especially with the digital world and the internet, and it probably has affected many more people in a variety of ways. That's obvious, that a character like this, which has a darkness, a horror angle to it, a mythology, a mystery, and it tends to cling, for lack of a better word, to younger people, antisocial people who aren't fully developed, who other people within that world, other users, so to speak, can take advantage of them, can put the wrong malicious information on there regarding the Slender Man, or play tricks, and people can get their minds completely warped. And I know that if I had been growing up in that world, I probably would have had my mind warped in one way or the other. But at the same time, the Slender Man wasn't really meant for that either, because it was mostly seen as just a horror story online that people can make their own stories up with, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. And everyone has their dark fascinations, and people like horror, obviously. People love horror, and they don't want to admit the things that they're intrigued by or whatever it might be. And considering the amount of true crime documentaries out there in the world right now, obviously that's a big fascination with people, whether they readily admit it or not. But this one is definitely worth a watch. It's very unsettling, obviously, because you have a lot of interviews with these two girls where the police are asking them, all right, who made you do this? And they say the Slender Man, and he said he would come kill my family if I didn't kill this girl. And then the other girl really expressing, I guess you can say, almost sociopathic behavior, saying, oh, well, you know, we took her there and we killed her and this, and really not showing much emotion or remorse at all. And that's partly due to her mental illness as well. But just a mixture of those things and those actual real documented interrogations where these cops, I can imagine being one of those police officers trying to ask these girls questions about that and figuring all this out. But the documentary has a lot of that. It has a lot of injects of Slender Man stories, artwork, interviews with other people who have been involved in the Slender Man world online as well, psychologists, everyone you can imagine. So it's very well researched. It's very well told and directed and edited, very compelling despite the darkness. And unsettling nature of it. It also has interviews with the two families where they did, one of them who had the schizophrenic daughter. The story they bring up is when we went and saw Bambi together, my daughter wasn't upset when the mother died in Bambi, spoiler. And she said that there were a lot of other weird little things that made the kid not seem as normal as she should be in terms of emotional responses and behavior. And so that was pretty interesting to watch. And then also the other family who are basically having to deal with their daughter being this accomplice in this attempted murder and them never really being able to recover from it, having to take care of their other child, live in a world where everyone knows who they are, knows who the kid is, what they did, and they're having to live in this world of complete confusion and guilt and shame and horror, really. So it's a very upsetting, sad documentary, but it also does present you a lot of different angles and perspectives and gives you a lot of information on the actual Slender Man sensation as well. So if you want to learn about that, you don't know anything about it, or if you're curious, check it out. This is a good one to start with because I'd rather people do that than just go online and type in Slender Man, see what they can find out. This is a really good cautionary tale, one that everyone should watch, especially in terms of talking about mental illness, the dangers of the internet, interpretations of art, and related things. So there's a lot of interesting things to talk about there, to think about. It's just one that you really have to be in the right mood for. And if you're going to watch anything about the Slender Man, this or the 2018 film, absolutely watch this. Don't bother with the dramatization. So yeah, it's really, really good. I would highly, highly recommend it. Give it a look. That would be a heavy 4 out of 5. All right. Well, hope you enjoyed that. Again, that was a little bit random, but I figured it was a good discussion, good things to have out there, and the good and the bad of the Slender Man when it comes to media. All right. Well, I can end off with other stuff I watched. Have a handful of things. Nothing too crazy, though. I rewatched with some coworkers Anchorman 2, The Legend Continues, which I love Will Ferrell, as most people do. I think he's hilarious. I love the first Anchorman movie, and anything Adam McKay does, I'm there for sure. I've seen it probably 3 or 4 times now. There are 3 different versions of it, maybe 2. I watched the theatrical cut this time, and I do like the movie overall. I prefer the first one, but most of the time when I watch these movies, or watch this one, I have it on in the background, or I stop and start it because I'm doing other things, etc., etc. But watching it, as I said on my Letterboxd review, watching it uninterrupted, one sitting, was a bit of a slog. It's almost 2 hours. And while I love those characters, I love the cast, I love the world, there were just points where it felt so dragged out, so bloated, 2 at 11 out of 10 all the time, where I was like, all right, I'm laughing consistently, but some scenes just went on too long. Certain plot points, like where he goes blind and there's the recovery, all that stuff is just too much. The shark, it's clever and stupid and witty, but there are points where in terms of the runtime where I was like, all right, this does not need to be there. So I still like the movie. It's very entertaining. There's a lot of, I guess it resonates with me a lot more than a lot of other comedies, but still not amazing. Went down a little bit this time around, but still worth a watch for sure if you like that kind of comedy. Then I rewatched American Psycho with Christian Bale, which remains one of the most insane movies that I've ever seen. Christian Bale is incredible. Goes without saying, he's amazing in the movie and has a very good cast overall. Not one for everybody. It's very unsettling, very darkly funny, weird, bizarre, unpredictable, violent, but it is clearly a very influential film, made a huge impact when it came out, and is one of, again, Christian Bale's best roles for sure, in my opinion. Then I rewatched Isle of Dogs, the Wes Anderson film, which I still really, really love. And I did do a Wes Anderson bonus show on our Bandcamp page, which is filmbuds.bandcamp.com. And there's about 65 bonus shows there now, maybe more. Really, really like it. Love stop motion. And you can hear my full review there, so I won't go in too much into that. And then one thing I did review on Letterboxd that I think made some people comment, and I appreciate that, is I did show a coworker of mine Evil Dead Rise from last year, and I did the Evil Dead franchise on a bonus show, so you can check that out too. He was losing his mind in this movie. He had never seen one of the Evil Dead movies before, and I think and I was talking about this on the regular show or the bonus show, if you're a newer person to this franchise, I don't know if it's better to start with the originals or these newer ones. I think they're all great, but my friend was losing his mind, scared beyond belief. And I really, really liked the movie as well, but he was going crazy, and it was a pretty enjoyable horror experience. So that was really good. So check that out if you haven't yet. I would really get into the Evil Dead movies if you are unfamiliar. And then lastly, I watched Kurt Cobain Montage of Heck, which is the fairly recent Kurt Cobain documentary, biopic documentary, which takes you really from all the way to when he was born through up to his death. And it's one of the best music documentaries that I've ever seen. One of the best rock and roll documentaries, absolutely. There's so much footage, so much emotional resonance, very unsettling to watch because it is about Kurt Cobain and just his unraveling and up and downs, and has a lot of interviews with Courtney Love, a lot of concert footage, interview footage, everything you can imagine. It has animation incorporated into certain parts of the storytelling. It's not only one of the best, but I would say if you want to know how to make a good documentary that has a variety of styles, of storytelling, of visuals, watch this movie. It's done by Brett Morgan, who also just did the Moon Age Daydream documentary about David Bowie, which I have watched a little bit of and I'm loving. So yeah, if you are interested in watching a great documentary, or you're interested in seeing how someone can incorporate so much versatility into one movie, especially if it's a documentary, watch this, because there aren't many that would match it, in my opinion. So yeah, that is a must watch, and that is currently on HBO along with Moon Age Daydream. Those are both there. Or Max, excuse me. All right, well, that is about it, I believe. As I said earlier, Elle will be back next week. We're going to be doing the Trolls franchise, doing all three movies, Trolls World Tour, and then the new one, Trolls Band Together. So that should be fun, and I'll probably put that up on the Bandcamp page as well. I think I'll re-edit it after the fact, so that way we can have all the franchise episodes together if you want to add that to your collection there. Keep an eye out for that. Should be a great time. We watched them all in about a day or two, and that was really fun. So that should be great. Follow us on social media at FilmBuds. Elle and I are also both on Letterboxd. Email us, TheFilmBudsPodcast@gmail.com. Tell your friends, rate, review, subscribe. Check out our bonus show page. There's years and years, hours and hours of good content there. Please let everybody you know about FilmBuds. Please share it around. We really do appreciate it. And thank you to all of our new listeners, our longtime listeners. We hope you'll stick around because we love having you. All right, well, hope you enjoyed it even half as much as I did, and I'll see you next time, y'all.